Hello and welcome, friends. Frenzy here, bringing you more Kerbal Space Program mod overview, and we're jumping right in because this is going to be our kind of a part two to the engine igniter. So we have real fuels here, as you can see. You can jump in. It has its own tank GUI, so you can see all the different types of fuels that you can use. Typically, different fuel tanks you have different options. From what I understand, engines. I think certain engines can only use certain types of fuel. I believe that's how it works, from my understanding. So I'm just kind of playing around here, letting you see some of the differences here. And Real Fuels it's pretty cool, especially obviously if you like realism. Not surprisingly, it's interesting because what it does is it can change the value of how much delta V you have. Not surprisingly, different fuels offer different ISPs, specific impulse, so you can get more delta V out of it. You can get less. What I'm using right here is liquid hydrogen, liquid oxygen, so pretty high impulse, specific impulse, using that type of fuel. Not necessarily always in the atmosphere, but it is. It's very high overall, I would say. Sometimes, things like solid rocket boosters, they tend to have a better specific or lower specific impulse, which is good when you're in the atmosphere. You want to go ahead and use those lower specific impulse in the atmosphere, and then use things like the hydrogen, liquid oxygen as you kind of get higher up in the atmosphere. But one of the interesting things about this is, and I'm going to demonstrate this in a little bit, but different fuels can do different things. So liquid hydrogen, as well as liquid oxygen, in case you didn't know, tends to boil off. So it will slowly start to vanish, slowly start to kind of decay. So, or boil off, as I said. And that's important to consider. If you use liquid hydrogen, liquid oxygen in real fuels, you have to think, maybe I need to use it primarily in a first stage, similar to how the space shuttle does. Using liquid hydrogen, liquid oxygen kind of in that first initial burst to get off the ground. So there is not much of a boiling off because there's not really much time. This is not something you'd really want to use if you're going to the moon or going interplanetary, because then you're going to go ahead and lose a lot of that fuel just from traveling, which is unfortunate. You don't want that, obviously. You'll see here, I'm just kind of playing a little bit, showing you how different fuels can give you different outcomes in terms of ISP, specific impulse, as well as delta V, which is something worth considering. And I'm not sure how well Kerbal Engineer takes this into consideration. I believe he does. You can also see you can change the type of tank. I just changed it to a cryogenic tank, so I believe that will hold in. Keep it from boiling off a little bit too quickly, as opposed to not using any kind of cryogenic tank. So that's something to consider too. Hydrogen, liquid oxygen are really good to use in those first stages, as I mentioned, those core stages to kind of get you off the ground here, which I'm going to go ahead and do. Other stages, you can see here at the top here, I'm using Irazine, I believe, in NTO. So that's good to note, because that's going to be my service module that I'm using for this example here, and that's going to give me a little bit of life. Specific impulse, specific impulse, not that great for when you're on the ground, but when you're up there in the vacuum, perfect, because it doesn't boil off. And you'll see here, I'm just kind of giving you an example of this liquid hydrogen, liquid oxygen boiling off as I time accelerate. So it's something you do strongly have to consider. And what fuels you use makes a pretty big difference, as you saw there, in terms of delta V. I think it was up to almost a 2,000 delta V difference, which is significant. So I'm just kind of launching off here, just kind of having a little bit of fun, because there isn't really too much to show. After this, you're familiar with Engine Igniter, if you've watched that video prior to this one. So there's some factors there too that kind of goes along with real fuels as well. But just kind of having a little bit of fun here, launching up. At the very end, I'll kind of show you how, that service module, how its fuel hasn't boiled off, which is very important to make note of. But hopefully you have enjoyed. Again, feel free to drop a like if you enjoyed watching this video. Please comment. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. If you have any suggestions for future mods you'd like me to kind of take a look at, please go ahead. I'm more than happy to do so. And feel free to subscribe if you want to see more. Well, hopefully you've enjoyed again, and see you next time.